Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Shinder here with Jason Gianni, and this is our new show, episode 2. We're only 2 episodes into this, so you're getting in on the ground level. This is a tribute to the tributes. What is that about? So let me ask you all a question. Oh wait, first of all, tell us where you're all watching from. I'm in Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains, and Jason Gianni is in Livingston, New Jersey.
Yes, I am.
That's right.
You know what's funny? In all the years, I'm from Jersey, as a kid, and I lived in California for 10 years, but in all the years that I've been in Jersey, I've never heard anyone say Joycey.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. And I don't hear an accent with you whatsoever.
Well, I don't have much of an accent, but what you gotta do is just not pronounce the R. It's more like Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Or George Carlin used to say, finally, the people in New Jersey have a new disease to mispronounce, tuberculosis. So hey, what's this all about, folks? Have you ever been to a bar or a pub or a club or whatever, and there's a band playing, and maybe they play an Aerosmith song, and then a Cream song, and then a Led Zeppelin song, and then an AC/DC song, and it all just kind of sounds the same, like it sounds like them? I personally hate that. Okay, I hate it!
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in learning to emulate the sound of the bands and songs and musicians and instruments that you're doing, because that gives us different tools in our toolbox, right, Jason?
That's correct.
So we decided to come up with this show called A Tribute to the Tributes, where we highlight amazing tribute bands and point out what they're doing right and what is so awesome. And sometimes it even bleeds over into the whole production, which you'll see today. And you saw in the first episode, if you saw it, which was all about a Genesis, what we call role play band. Jason and I decided, let's categorize this stuff. So there's a cover band, which is kind of the first one that I mentioned, that plays all different songs of other people's music. That's a cover.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a tribute band, which focuses on one band and they play their music and do a great job at it. And then there's a role play band, which dresses like them, looks like them. I'm having a total senior moment, Jason. What was the Genesis band we featured?
Musical Box.
Musical Box had the same stage set up, the same actual Genesis props. It was the movements from a particular Genesis concert film were exact. It was really, really cool. Yeah. And what we have today is not a role play band, but the ultimate level of emulation when it comes to a tribute band. And they are called the Australian Pink Floyd. Yeah, or Aussie Floyd, as they're referred to. We're going to show some clips, too. So this is not just for drummers, it's for all musicians and also for music fans. But Jason, why don't you take everybody, just kind of skim the rock across the pond as far as their history and when they started, the nucleus of the members, and then we'll start with the clip.
Great. Actually, just before we go into that, I just want to remind people that Dan and I are both, we picked up our drumsticks to try to be like our idols as far as the guys that influenced us with original music and wanting to be in original bands and so on and so forth. But just to remind everybody that this is not necessarily what we set out to do. When we were kids, we weren't like, hey, we want to be in a cover band.
Right.
But the level of bands that we're talking about here, especially sort of throwing the cover band idea out and talking more about the real professional tribute band or the role-playing band, has enabled musicians of today. Now, we're not talking about the COVID era we're in right now, but the way that the music business has changed so much, it's enabled us to really be able to work more, have high-level marketed gigs, be in front of crowds, get involved with companies, do a lot of things that you normally set out to do as a kid, but not necessarily being in an original band, because of the way that the music industry has changed so much.
There's more opportunities now, and this is one of them. This is also, like Jason's saying, to open your mind to some other. What would you rather do? Manage a grocery store for $60,000 a year, or be in an awesome tribute band like we're going to show you for $60,000 a year? If I had my choice, and all things being equal income-wise, I'm going to play music.
Absolutely. And a lot of the bands that we are talking about are some of the greatest bands that have ever existed. We're talking about the Genesis and the Rush and the Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. We're not talking about, the local bar band that you copy them.
Right.
Who are they? So, but try to keep that in mind as we're talking here, folks, is that we're not really promoting the idea of this is the only way to go. We're promoting the fact that the business has changed, and the idea of the traveling show has become a major opportunity for musicians, especially drummers, to work in a highlighted type of situation these days.
Absolutely.
So so don't shut that out. So now, as far as Aussie Pink Floyd, first of all, Dan brought them to my attention a couple weeks ago. I actually did not. I didn't really know who they were, but when I started to poke around of who they were, I started to realize, yes, okay, I know who you're talking about. For instance, one of the singers, Durga, is one of Dan's very good friends. We were trying to get her on. We couldn't successfully do it, but she's someone who worked with Pink Floyd and also worked with Aussie Pink Floyd, and a couple of things a couple bells went off there. So what you'll find with Aussie Pink Floyd is that they did have quite a big of a connection with Pink Floyd itself. One of the things Dan and I have spoken about is that the ultimate stamp of the ultimate thumbs up is getting recognized by the band themselves.
Right.
And Aussie Pink Floyd has had connections with Pink Floyd, and I think that's kind of a big step for that opportunity that we're talking about.
Yeah,
So-
some of the same technical, some of the what? What did he say?
It's a Sunday.
Some of the
Some
of the people on the technical side of Pink Floyd's production have also been working with Aussie Pink Floyd, is what I was trying to say. And they played at David Gilmour's 50th birthday 100 years ago. So,
Right.
actually, before you go through the who's who of the band, let's show a clip. I'm going to show their teaser clip, a bit of it. It's 7 minutes, so I'm just going to bounce around through it. And then we're going to show clips from one of the songs from Animals that Australian Pink Floyd does, one of the songs from Division Bell, and one of the songs from Dark Side of the Moon. You might be able to guess which one, since this is primarily a drumming show. But first, check this out. This is their teaser video called Everything Under the Sun from 2016 in Germany. I'll shut up. And check out this intro. I love how the triangle to form the prism is the shape of Australia. Like right there already, it's like, that's the sound.
The lunatic is on the grass.
Alright, we're going to show more in a bit. I just want to say, before Jason goes through some of their history and members, that I mentioned in the very beginning that the level of production is part of what makes this so extraordinary. And again, this is not a role play band, it's a tribute band. And I've seen Pink Floyd, I'm really into Pink Floyd, and I love two things about this band. One, they go way back into Floyd's catalog, way back. And, I mean, all the way back to set your controls to the heart of the sun, way back into the 60s. And if you close your eyes, if you know Floyd, it still sounds like, if someone said, hey, this is a new bootleg I found from Floyd, and I didn't see it, I'd be, wow, this is great. It's just amazing. But go on, Jason.
So, looks like Australian Floyd started in 1988, and they've been going pretty much consistently since. I don't know how often they get, we're talking, quite a long time. So I don't know if they've been consistent through the entire time, but they are still around. And it looks like the three main band members, Steve Mack, Colin Wilson, and Jason Sawford, have been with them pretty much since the beginning. Looks like Colin came in a little later and ducked out a little ago. But also the drummer Paul Bonney, who's been complimented by a couple people on some of the comments that you put up already, Dan, has been in since 1998. Looks like a very competent player. And so they've been around for quite some time. And one of the things that we spoke about in the musical box is the idea that there's a possibility that one of the things that keeps these bands around for as long as they are is the idea of being able to franchise and either franchise to different areas or have a couple different bands going at the same time, have a couple different members kind of come in and out. It doesn't look so much like it with the members of this particular band, but I have seen the idea of franchising very, very successful in other tribute bands to keep them going while the main bands are touring. I mentioned in the last show that I have worked with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and if you guys know, TSO actually has two existing bands, an East Coast band, a West Coast band, and then we used to rehearse in New York for actually a third band, the backup band, that would be put on the road if need be, that sort of thing. So my guess is the idea of this sort of becoming an organized, almost a corporation, is something that keeps these bands going, and this looks like it might be kind of fitting in that zone there.
Yeah, absolutely. We might as well dive right in. Let's show a little bit of Time, since that is just one of the ultimate, most recognizable prog rock intros of a song. It's also a very popular intro the drummers get off on, and you don't have to be just a drummer to appreciate this, of course. But this album is the album that catapulted Pink Floyd into unbelievable success. This album was on the top 40 charts longer than any album ever. It's either still on. It came out in 1972. Yeah, it's still on consistently since 1972. No other song or album or band or artist has accomplished anything close to that. So it says something about their music. But let's check out Time. Check it out, folks. Oh, and then we're going to discuss, think of the alarm clocks in the beginning, and we'll talk about that when we come back. Here we go. We'll address some comments and shout-outs when we get back as well.
Yeah, I was just reading through some of them, so...
hopefully you all are starting to get the idea. That's just such amazing stuff. Just a real quick shout outs, real quick. Mike Skinner's watching from South Wales, and he's actually seen them in South Wales. Brit Floyd, mentioned by Michael Comini. Brit Floyd puts on a good show. They did a rendition of a great Gig in the Sky that was an improvement on the original. I didn't think that would have been possible. I'll have to look that up. And hey, Rod Billinghurst is on board. I went to high school with Rod. We used to build hot rods, race cars. John Kinsting says, I think the ultimate franchise is postmodern jukebox. And by the way, this reminds me, if you folks know of a really good tribute band or role play band that you're into, you could email us through the website drumtalktv.com. There's 3 selections of how to contact us. Go ahead and send in a suggestion, and Jason and I will research it. We're still catching up on ones that were sent in before. So, John, I'm going to get to your question in just a bit.
Yeah, let's hold off on that. Yeah, that's a topic we're going to talk about.
One of the things I mentioned when we started playing this clip is to pay attention to the alarm clocks and stuff, and Jason brought up something interesting. And, I got to admit, there's something that's difficult for me about doing this show. One is, well, if you've watched any Drum Talk TV interviews, I don't use notes. And I've had, like when we lived in Vegas, I always had artists come over for dinner, and then I'd take them back for the show. We'd do the interview at my house or at the venue before sound check, whatever. And it was hard to how do I have a conversation without doing the interview? Well, Jason, it's kind of the same with you when we meet and talk about what the next show is going to be like and our talking points. It's like, I don't want to talk it all out because I want it to be fresh and organic. But one of the great things Jason brought up in our talk is, are they using the actual peripheral recordings? Because as you know, there's a lot of sound effects and things like that with Pink Floyd. So starting with, if we talk about the Money in the beginning of Money, there's the helicopter and the yelling in the beginning of, was it?
Another Brick in the Wall.
Another Brick in the Wall, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the clocks and everything in the beginning of this. I think, actually with time, I'm not sure. But for Another Brick in the Wall, we kind of figured out that they're probably not using the same recording, because you said you were able to tell that the yelling is done from someone on stage.
Yes.
So I said, well, they couldn't have lifted just the helicopter sound out, so that must be a different helicopter sound. But yeah, it all sounds amazing. So we don't know the answer to time. I haven't done the A-B side by side, but it's freaking phenomenal. And this song, the original, has Richard Wright, who has a wonderful voice. The late, great Richard Wright, great composer, keyboard player, piano player, and singer. He sings the second part of those, and the was it a guitar player or bass player who was singing his part sounded just like him.
Just like him,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And the gentleman that's doing Gilmore's part sounded like a younger Gilmore as well. And there's another gentleman who you'll see that sings David Gilmour parts that if you close your eyes, forget about it. You'd never know.
Yeah. Well, I brought this up because, as you can see in the description, I was playing for 3 years with the Ultimate Queen Celebration, starring Mark Martell from the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. One of the decisions that our music director, Brandon, decided was that we shouldn't use the regular sound effects that are in the background of the Queen song. So he redeveloped them and reprogrammed them himself. I give him a lot of credit for that because it takes time to really get that sound to be as exact as possible. Even things like hand claps, things like that, he was trying to create himself. I think, look, nowadays you just never know from a legal standpoint what you're going to run into. We just don't know. I mean, there's still sort of a little more freedom to play what you want live and not really have responsibility for that, as long as you're not selling things and making money off of specific products. But you want to kind of keep that in mind of, well, what are you lifting here? What's going on here? So as Dan said, I'm not really sure either. I did a little more A-Bing in the beginning of time, but in reference to the rototom part that Paul was playing compared to Nick Mason. But I was very curious as to, from a sound effect, what they're doing and how they did it. I'll tell you, it sounds pretty damn close.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
And we're looking at it from that fan appreciation standpoint. We're not trying to police anything here. I want to make sure everybody understands that. Yeah, and Paul's part sounded great. I've played this song a lot. I've played it with a band live, and I've played to the recording in my studio on my Dan's Almost Daily Vlog show. And when I must admit, when I'm playing with a band and I play that song, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm doing it.
Right.
When I play to the recording, I am never playing it right because there's parts where Nick is playing in between a couple things I'm doing. I've never written it out. I've never seen the sheet music. I've never really put a lot of effort learning that note for note, and so much so that I can't tell if Paul Bonney is playing every note. And then I said to Jason, I said, well, did Nick play every note? Did he play it the same way? You know, we've never looked into it that far. It's an interesting topic, and I think so. Here's part of the question: how much latitude do you give a band or an instrument when they're doing something like this, where you still say, that's just freaking phenomenal, and it's not necessarily note for note? To me, a little latitude's okay, because every band does their live version of something. What helps me, what makes up for it, for me and my sensibilities, when the sound is so spot on. And we're going to play some more stuff where you'll see, oh my God, that is Gilmore's sound. There's the beginning of Pigs. There's this synthesizer portamento from that pitch. It sounds just like, it's like, to me, that stuff goes a long way with the effort and attention to detail. Forget the crazy lighting rig for a minute. You know, just nailing those little sounds, even if it's one sound used once in the composition. To me, that's like, yeah, you can have some latitude.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I did a little bit of A-Bing of Paul's parts to compare to Nick's part.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't exact. As Dan said, I support exactly what Dan is saying, is that if the approach and the vibe and the sound is there, you don't have to play every single note perfectly to make it come off and sort of sell its point, okay? I would probably do the best to transcribe. Like a song like Time is so important. The drums are so part of that hook that to me it would make more sense to maybe transcribe it and try to get it as perfect as possible. Mike Skinner even wrote, I doubt if Nick Mason will play it exactly the same time each time. I agree.
Exactly.
But you also have to take, I think it's about,
if you're emulating, what are you emulating?
Right, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. Are you emulating Nick's parts live, or are you emulating the exact part from the record?
Right.
And I think that there's a mode of thinking there. I know with the Ultimate Queen celebration, because Mark's voice was so much like Freddie, we would try to really emulate the record.
Yeah.
So if I was doing Time, I would probably end up transcribing it and getting as close as I possibly can. And that's my opinion. I'm not saying that it has to be that way, but that's my opinion. I'll tell you, it was damn close, and whoever's doing the engineering made it sound just like it. But you might even think of the pitch of the rotos, making sure those are pitched right.
That's right.
Things like that. I mean, there are things to think about. By the way, I'll just say something real quick. Guys, please, questions, comments, keep coming.
Yeah, we'll get to them, we promise.
Yeah, we're going to get to them, but keep the, we got a big chat going here. We're both reading it, so keep making comments. So go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. Let's play, actually, since I touched on Pigs, let's play that, and then we'll get to the topic that's related to John Kinsting's question, and we'll address some other questions. And there's something else I was going to say, and I forgot, so I'll skip over it. Here we go with...
Just play the music.
Yeah, here we go with Pigs. We'll let this go for a while, because this is extraordinary, in my opinion. I love this. couple of things I want to comment on real quick, if I may go first.
Yeah.
The keyboards are unbelievably spot on, and while it'd be easy for someone to say, well, you just sampled the sounds, I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think it's just really good programming, and really good playing, too. The gentleman that's singing sounds just like Roger Waters, and I love that they put on his effect on the voice during those choruses. It sounds just like him. Not to be critical, and I don't mean this as a negative, the guitar, however, does have a little more distortion on it than the classic Strat sound
I noticed that
David had.
Yeah.
But it's still great. The parts there, and then the other guitar player, who you'll also hear in another clip, folks, sing just like David Gilmour. His sound does sound just like David's on that. And it's all good. I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong. I'm not a freaking lab coat prick that's gonna, say, hey, they're doing it wrong. They're doing it how they're doing it, and it's freaking awesome. And so that's my take. I just think it's great. Even the sound of the cowbell or woodblock, I'm not sure. It's the same note, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah. Right?
Brian Calhoun just made up a really good point, as he said, it's a shame that it takes separate people to replace Gilmour and Waters. I think we're going to get to that a little bit in the show, later in the show. Yeah. We're going to talk about those, but mainly we're going to talk about the vocal lineup with this particular band as compared to Pink Floyd themselves. But yeah, I think there are points of this particular. I was watching. Which show is this? The Royal Albert show? Royal Albert show?
This is. If I look at it, it's going to goof everything up. I don't think so. I think it's in Germany or the Hammersmith. I might be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I was watching the Royal Albert Hall show, and there was one or two times where I closed my eyes and went, oh my God, the vocals are like so spot on. But it was interesting, like who specifically was singing at the time compared to normally what Pink Floyd does and what their lineup is. But I think we're going to talk about that a little later anyway, so let's just hold off on that. Brian, thanks for bringing that up. I just think I liked the idea of the extra guitar. The extra distortion on the guitar, because it was a little more modern. And it stuck out to me too. I went, "Whoa, that guitar is like that's in there, man."
Yeah, and for all I know, that's exactly the sound David used on a particular bootleg or something.
Right.
There are some bootlegs out there where they played one Animal song. And I don't remember if it was Dogs, Pigs, or Sheep, but there's a bootleg out there where they played it before the album was even recorded, and it sounds quite different. And the sounds of the instruments are different. So it might be spot on for a bootleg version. Like when I was in a Zeppelin, we were a cover band, not a tribute band, because we played some other stuff, but we did a 3-4 hour show. 80% of it was Zeppelin, and most of that Zeppelin portion was from the Song Remains the Same Motion Picture soundtrack. But then sometimes we'd throw in, hey, let's do this from the 77 tour, where we'd open with The Song Remains the Same into the beginning of The Rover into Sick Again. So for all I know, that's the perfect sound for a year that they toured that song. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think, and this kind of, I don't know if I want to get into John's question just right away.
We'll show one more clip, and then we'll come back with that topic, because it's important.
Okay. There's a specific comment I'll make with that in regards to it keeps going back to the idea of the role playing versus tribute band,
right?
And how exact you want to get it, how true to everything you want to get it. I think that all is sort of like that's a topic to discuss amongst the band itself. Is like how close do you want to get it, because things will stick out a little bit differently.
And the whole thing that we're talking about, the sonic element of does the guitar sound like this, does the rotos tune the same, that whole element is one of the biggest takeaways for any of you that are in any kind of cover band, whether you're playing at an Elks Lodge, John, or whether you're playing, at a bar mitzvah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's the idea that if you play a Zeppelin song, then Bad Company, then Cream, and then AC/DC, then Aerosmith, that it doesn't all sound the same. That you're using the same instrument sounds. You're not just singing a little higher because it's a Zeppelin song.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's sort of, in my opinion, the beginning layer of all of this. If you play a bunch of songs by a bunch of different bands, you're not a tribute band, but you can play each song as if you're paying tribute to that band at that moment for that song, and you get those sounds right. If you're going to play something that has a very classic Stratocaster sound, and you're going to play that on a Les Paul or an ES335 hollow body, there's almost no way to make it work,
Yeah.
So it's those little things. By the way, that band I was in, the guitar player had all the same guitars as Jimmy. He had the same year Sunburst Les Paul. He had the black and white Dan Electro. He had the Burgundy double neck 12 and 6 string. So we were really into it. The violin bow. I had the timpani drums. I still do. So I'm kind of fanatical when it comes to that. That'll lead us into what John's question is referring to, and the difference between tribute and role play right after this clip of... This is one that, Jason, you can talk about leading into it, because you actually requested that we use this clip, and that's High Hopes.
Ah, yes, yeah. High Hopes is actually my favorite. My
From this tour.
From that tour, right there, exactly. This is my wife's favorite record because my wife's favorite song from Pink Floyd, and it's just a haunting song. They did a couple of ballads around this time in regards to like High Hopes and On the Turning Away that are not only were so just heart-wrenchingly beautiful, but the lyrics are so applied to today.
Yeah.
A song like On the Turning Away, talking about, don't turn away from the others that you think are suffering. It's part of your suffering too. You got to help that. You look around the world and the whole world's suffering right now, and it's just so amazing. Like what they were talking about 30 years ago is so applied to today. High Hopes is one of those songs but also High Hopes and On the Turning Away are very highly produced songs. With orchestral layers and different instrumentation. And these are songs that if you kind of just get them a little wrong, they really just don't come off that well. They're not really a rock and roll song that you can just kind of,
it gets lost in the wall of whatever going on.
Exactly. So
I gotta say, which by the way, that is what makes Nick Mason's drumming brilliant. And what makes it hard to emulate. I've said this over and over. People like Nick Mason, Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts, get criticized for such simplicity. But music with drumming with that much space is often the hardest stuff to emulate because there's more margin for error that it screams out if you screw up the timing on one beat. And if you look at Nick's playing before Dark Side of the Moon, you've got metal, which has echoes, and You've got Adam Hart Mother. You've got the movie soundtrack to More. You've got the albums with Set Your Heart to the Controls of the Sun. Oh my God! Set Your Controls to the Heart of the Sun, and other stuff. And the Pompeii movie, his drumming was so much more active and aggressive and tribal. But they found their freaking sweet spot with Dark Side of the Moon. If that meant Nick laying back more and carrying that pocket and foundation, it's almost like he invented that type of drumming for that style of music. It's really interesting. I just want to but so that all the more to compliment Phil Bonney for doing such a great job emulating him.
Paul Bonney.
Paul Bonney.
Paul
Phil's his brother. He's an accordion player. He plays metal polka.
in Scotland. I'll let you play the clip, but with somebody who has experience playing with a lot of orchestral being on stage with orchestras with drumming, it is so hard to find your little room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're on stage with 2 or 3 other musicians in a trio or a quartet, you can play whatever the hell you want, and whatever shit comes out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're on stage with an orchestra, you are the support mechanism. And a song like High Hopes, you have to find your spot to make the song really sing and be as musical as possible.
And to that point, in this clip, you'll see that it all comes down to what's my nuance? How can I contribute to this piece just in a nuanced sort of manner and not just scream over it? So let's check this out. High Hopes, 2012, Australian Pink Floyd. Ooh, the fly. Hear that, folks?
We lived when we were young, in a world of magnets, miracles. Our thoughts strayed constantly and without boundary. The ringing of the division bell had begun. Along the long road and on down the causeway, still meet there by the cut. There was a ragged band that followed in our footsteps, running before time took our dreams away, leaving the myriad small creatures trying to tie us to the ground, to a life consumed by slow decay. The grass was greener, the light was brighter, with friends surrounded, the nights of wonder, looking beyond the embers of bridges glowing behind us,
in this clip.
to a glimpse. The light was brighter.
Skip ahead to the slide solo, the steel guitar. Absolutely masterful. First of all, he sounds like exactly like David Gilmour's voice. And that instrument, the slide steel, the 10-string, I believe it is not an easy instrument to play. I remember being 10 years old and sing Yes songs for the first time, 10, 12, I don't know, and sing Yes songs for the first time, and I had heard And You and I, but didn't understand exactly what was going on until I saw the movie. When I saw Steve Howe playing that instrument, and then later David Gilmour, those two are the best, in my opinion, in rock music that utilize that instrument. And what's this gentleman's name? Do you know which one that is? I'm so sorry, folks.
It's if that's the main guitar player, Steve Mack.
I think that is Steve Mack.
Yeah.
Just brilliant job, and again, attention to detail, the patience to play those long, sustaining notes, slide in just the right place. I mean, it's these little things that make the biggest impact and the women singing and all of that, and all that space to give you all that room to screw any one thing up. You know, it's not easy. It's not
at all
easy.
Yeah.
And even the bell sounds like the same tone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's recording or if Paul is playing.
That's that question that we brought up before. I'm not really sure. It surely sounds like it, and it's up there in the mix, that's for sure.
Yeah, so let's dive into, again, role play versus tribute, and this addresses John Kinsting's question of, does it bother you, he says, not looking at, I'm going by memory, this is dangerous, does it bother you when a drummer in a tribute band plays a setup that's way different from the drummer who they're playing tribute to? To me, it used to, but now that I've separated in my mind the difference between a tribute band and a role play band, it doesn't. If it's a role play band, you gotta have the same setup, the same color, the same gear. It's gotta be the same. In a tribute band, I give a lot of latitude, because to me, in a tribute band, it's more about the sound. What's coming out of that rig, you know?
I wrote down 3 things before to just mention, and the first is the role playing versus tribute. And one of the things that Dan and I discussed in our meeting yesterday is that I wasn't 100% sure, looking at the other instruments and the vocalist, which I think we should talk about as well, of whether or not the lineup of the vocalists, the instrumentation that the other instruments are using, were exactly like Pink Floyd. I wasn't sure.
Well, can I mention something real quick on that? And this also goes to Brian Cahoon's point that it's a shame it takes so many musicians to recreate. But we have to remember, Pink Floyd always toured with extra musicians from about, well, not counting the female singers for Dark Side of the Moon, but from about Wish You Were Here or the following album forward, they had other musicians. The Division Bell tour, the shirt I'm wearing, they had 2 keyboard players and another percussionist. They had the 3 female vocalists, Durga, her sister Laura Lee, another woman. You know, so we need to consider that. But go on.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the consideration. I think some of it is spoiled for the fact that you and I started with Musical Box, which, if anybody was watching the show last week, we were talking about, I mean, it was just like, they played Supper's Ready, all 20 minutes was exactly the same as Genesis, the way they were singing, the instruments,
dance moves, everything.
It was amazing,
So obviously, dance moves. What's he talking about? Peter Gabriel does all these little things, and the guy doing his part, and that's what I call it, playing his part, moved exactly like him. Had the flower costume, had the bat wing thing for Watcher of the Skies, just unbelievable, glow in the dark paint around his eyes, everything.
Right. So I think all that does, and somebody mentioned before, I don't know if it was Mike or someone else mentioned before, it's just too hard to do role playing. And I agree. I mean, that is a dedication that is like, on another level, where you have to really dedicate watching movies and watching everything to like where the drums are set up, how they're set up, where's the guitar player, how are you, it's more like almost like a Broadway show.
The outfits.
And keeping it everything, outfit changes, all that kind of stuff. So that's the first point. It's the role playing versus tribute. The second is we have to take into account the different eras of the band too.
Right.
Now, if you're a band, let's say you're Rush and you're doing, well, that's not a good example because Neil always had a large kit, but if you're doing a certain record, okay, if you're doing a certain era of a band, it wouldn't necessarily be fair to have a humongous kit if you're doing Genesis I Can't Dance or something like that, versus what Phil did back in the day on Abacab or Duke or something before that, that kind of thing. All right, so a lot of it does have to do with times, eras, and even in the role-playing bands, you got to put into perspective that they are pulling from different times.
Right.
And you know, they have to be able, this song had this song had a smaller setup, blah, blah, blah. That has a big part of it. The third thing I wrote down is also drummer's comfort. So for instance, and I'll use my own example, when I was playing in the Ultimate Queen celebration, Roger Taylor went through a period of times where he used rototoms.
Yeah.
But he used them off to his right, under his ride, under his crash, off his floor toms. For me, that's not a good comfort level. I couldn't do that. I'm short. It didn't work for certain things. If I wanted to do the fat bottom girls fill all the way across, I like to use my rotos going all the way across. So I didn't want to go, you know, I didn't want to do that across my body. So I used them off to the left, the way, you know, Neil Peart would use them, and it was a bigger roundhouse type of kit. And I know that didn't match Roger Taylor perfectly, but we weren't necessarily a role-playing band, and that wasn't comfortable for me. So I think it really comes down to the decisions of the band and what your ultimate goals are.
Yeah, great points. I'm going to play, just so people can get another taste, and then we'll look at comments. This is something we posted earlier today to promote this episode, but it's, I played this at the beginning, didn't I? Part of their highlight reel. Well, I'll skip to like the second half of it so you folks can see just some other clips of this wonderful band that's done such a great job. Check this out. I'll skip to like the middle.
You're on your own, sitting naked by the phone. Would you touch me? Hey, you, with your ear against the wall. Did they expect us to treat them with any respect? They can polish their mouths and sharpen their smiles and amuse themselves, playing games
Just
for a
like
while. Boom, boom, bang, bang, lie down, you're dead. Do you think that I know something you don't know? If I don't promise you the answer, would you go?
That sounds just like it.
Yeah. Amazing.
So that last, let me pause it. That last song, trivia question. I don't know if Jason even knows this. Who
Probably not.
knows who played drums on the original recording by Pink Floyd of that last song? And I can't think of the name of the song. But who played drums on that?
I don't know.
It wasn't Nick Mason.
Was it someone from the band?
Nope.
Was it Paul McCartney?
No.
Was it Dan Shinder? Yes.
Close. It was
know.
Carmine Appice.
Oh, that's right. I did know that. Yes, I heard
he
that.
He played on two
Yeah.
or three songs on that album, yeah.
Right. Yes, I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Good
Yeah.
trivia.
And it's not that Nick tried to do it and couldn't do it. They specifically called he talks about this in my very first interview with him. They specifically called him and talked to him about doing this, and he said, I went there and there was Nick in the control room, and it was like they wanted him for the heaviness of that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. I thought
That's
that, I always
good,
thought
sir.
that was neat. But there, again, the attention to detail in the vocals, that the fuzz on that last guitar thing sounds exactly like the album. I love that stuff. I love it. When
Yeah.
it's not meant to be like that, I'm okay with it. But if you're going to really do a tribute or role play, it's gotta be there. It can't be like, oh yeah, that's how it goes. We're playing the math. It's in the right key. The beat goes here. No, it's got to sound like it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Before we get onto some of the comments, I do want to just real quickly before we forget, I want to talk about the vocal situation, because that's something that we did bring up, and I brought up to you in our
Yes.
in our meeting, and that number one, I was not sure, or I made just a general comment of how many vocalists were on stage with this particular band, and that I felt it was more than Pink Floyd normally. I know that you were mentioning that on the Dark Side of the Moon tour, it was usually 2 women. This has 3 women, and then that particular band that we're listening to has 3 guys singing lead. So it's an interesting point. I think, again, it keeps, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it keeps going back to the role-playing versus tribute band. That's why I feel this is more of a tribute act than a role-playing act. But I do think that, for me, my opinion was that the guy that sang without the instrument, the individual singer, was the one that really shined as far as sounding like Gilmore the most, and really stuck out where he went, whoa, that kind of thing. So, look, it's different than Pink Floyd, but it does stand out, and it does it makes the point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the music is the most important here, and musically it makes a lot of sense, and they sound great. And if it was one of these things where they didn't sound good, or they brought this other guy in and he didn't impersonate well, I'd be like, well, why do they have this person there?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But it makes sense. It didn't affect me to the point where I went, well, they don't need 3 singers. I think it just is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 3 young ladies that are singing are replicating what Floyd did in the later years. And one more example between tribute and role play. If you go back, folks, and watch our episode, just look up A Tribute to the Tributes. A Tribute to the Tributes. Drum Talk TV, Tribute to the Tributes. On Facebook, you'll find the other episode. And that band, Musical Box, is a role play, whereas another band that I just love, that is a Genesis band, called The Farm, which is the name of where they recorded many of their albums.
Yes.
The Farm is a tribute band. There's even 2 drummers that are not playing like Phil and Chester. There just happens to be 2 drummers, and the singer doesn't play anything. He's just out front and sings. And you close your eyes and it is Phil freaking Collins. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But they're not set up like Genesis. They're not using, like, even these guys are not just have the giant disc, but they've got lasers, they got very lights, So that, again, is the difference between a tribute band and a role play band. Tribute band, you have all the latitude you need to have whatever instrumentation to reproduce the music you're reproducing, whereas a role play band should have, like, you're not going to have 3 guitar players in a Zeppelin tribute role play band.
Right.
Just,
Role
what
play
the hell
band,
is that? And I've seen a Zeppelin tribute band, so this speaks to John's question a little bit. I've seen a Zeppelin more like a tribute band that has 2 guitar players, and I admit, it's not a role play band, but that bothers me. Yeah. But I get it. It's so that they could play the studio stuff like the studio stuff was played, but I don't know. When it comes to the Zeppelin stuff, I have to admit, children, cover your ears. I'm a real dick. I'm like so particular because I did that for years, and I just am way too invested.
You bring up a good point, though. I think they're going to be that the opinions of people, whether they're in the band or even just people chatting right now, I think they might vary per band too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, for instance, Pink Floyd, to me, I think you could have anybody you want on stage because they have so much orchestration and different eras and
they did
that kind of right. But if you think, yeah, right, good point. But if you're talking about Hendrix, you know what I mean, and you want to play the classic Hendrix stuff, and you see 7 people on stage, it's like, no. Yeah, that's not right. So
any more right than you would have a 4-piece doing Sly and the Family Stone and saying it's a tribute.
Exactly.
They're not role playing, but how do you call it a tribute if, I don't know. And Jason and I, even with what we both just said, we'll never say, well, this is wrong and this is right. It's everybody has different sensibilities, and you as music fans set your own boundaries. We just thought of doing this show because we think that there's a huge takeaway for musicians to learn from this process, whether it's role play or tribute, if you're in a cover band. And most musicians who do not record records of original music are in cover bands. So how much better would your cover band B, if you played a Zeppelin song and it sounded more like Zeppelin, and the AC/DC song sounded like more like AC/DC, and Bad Company, and so on, rather than doing a set of music, there's 8 different bands,
Right.
but they all sound like your band.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
come on, put some effort
Right.
into it.
Right. Right. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at some comments real quick. Let's
Sure.
see. Brian Cahoon says, almost like King Crimson having 3 drummers to replace Bill Bruford. I have to admit, while I love that comment, I don't think that's what they did. I think that's just Robert Fripp saying, hey, I want to do this now.
Yeah.
You know?
Just being different. Yeah.
Yeah. Arlene Jim Z says, most listeners can't even identify unique drumming. Sigh. Sounds like she might be a drummer. Yeah, that's true too. Christina Liddell Jacobson says, hard work and good teamwork. Definitely. If I believe the band gives a good performance, respects the original, and the audience interacts positively, job done. Yeah, that's true, Mike. We need to go. We need to go so that Steven can fit this on... In fact, we're going to go right now so Steven can fit it on Instagram. So we're going to go, folks. Thanks so much for joining Jason, Gianni, and myself here on A Tribute to the Tributes with Australian Pink Floyd. See you, folks.
See you next time.